Bastards. Cheers. Well, today I want to talk about survival knives. What is the best survival knife? Well, there are many knives on the market. There is actually too much choice, and it's especially for beginning preppers. It's kind of overwhelming. What is the best knife? What can I afford? And they have to make those decisions. And yeah, there are a lot of knives. Sometimes there is some cheap pieces of irons that are rusting fast, and sometimes there are expensive pieces of iron that rust fast. So yeah, choosing a knife is something like choosing your first car if you start prepping. So in my case, the Glock field knife, the survival field knife, is in my opinion one of the best. I will talk about later why. But if you're a beginning prepper and you want to choose a knife, I would say keep it simple. That's the basic thing I would advise. Just take a knife that is very simple to maintain, very simple in use, very simple in build, because on the market you see a lot of these tactical, fancy knives that are really something that you perhaps sometimes see at cosplay shows. So yeah, don't fall for that one with advice. It could be something as simple as taking just just an old file, uh, and grind it till you got a knife. That's simple as that. Just a piece of steel knife with a wooden grip on it. That could be is equal as good as some fancy knife from the stores that once been one used in a certain movie. So yeah, what if you want to choose a knife? What do you watch out for? Well, I would say uh, a knife. I will demonstrate by examining my trusty Glock knife, and then I will tell you what you should look out for when choosing a survival knife. Well, first of all, the price. Expensive knife does not mean that it's a good knife. So just a knife that is made out of a good steel that will not rust that fast, but you have to watch it. How do you say this? The kind of metals that are involved in it, because sometimes you want a knife that is very hard for very fine um, cutting, but those knives are usually brittle. So, but if you choose a knife that is kind of that can take a punch, but it will get dull very fast because it's a little bit weaker. So try to find a metal that is in a good balance between those things. There is no perfect knife. There is no all in one. There is nothing like that. Or perhaps there is, but that will be very expensive. So yeah, if you're just a normal prepper, start with just a simple type of steel, rust free as possible, but yet again hard enough to do some finer works, but sturdy enough to do some real hacking, like we'll see in a minute. So first of all, what is very important is the scabbard where you keep the knife in it, because sometimes it's better to yeah, to make a new scabbard yourself, because some are just made out of leather, but yeah, sometimes that could be a problem, because if you pull the knife, if this was made out of a just a leather pouch or something, and you take the knife in out, then the blade could eventually cut open the sides, and then you will lose the knife. That could be problematic. You do not want to lose your knife in a survival situation. Yet again, the if you watch beneath it, the material should be a little bit longer than where the knife holds with at the end. Why? Because if you put your knife in your scabbard and you get all the way to the bottom, that will create a hole by the point of the knife eventually, if you after many pieces of use. So make sure there is enough space between the end of the pouch and a knife. Why? Because if you keep a knife against your leg, and you, like I said, you have a bad scabbard, and you put it in, out, and the beneath it's open, yeah, that could potentially stab in your leg with certain movements or a fall, and that could be dangerous for not only wounds but infection if you're in a survival situation. You do not want that, so that's something you need to watch out for. Another thing, as you can see, yeah, I will involve the Glock now right now. You see, there is a hole in it. That's good because if you do something with your knife, it's wet, or you work in the rain and it's wet, and you put it back in, then the moist will gather up if this is the inside is closed. If the inside is closed, that could be very bad because when you use it in days after, all that moist could help rust the knife. Even rust-free steel is just very slow rusting process, is something you need to know. So that could be bad. And yet again, not if you have a knife of good metal, there could be certain components still made out of regular iron or steel, like vices or connecting points, and those could rust, and that could be yet again a problem when you use later, and it will weaken the design of the knife. So a hole beneath it will let out the moist that builds up inside. So that's also something you need to watch out for. Yeah, I will continue. The If you got one of these scabbards that is made out of plastic, that's actually kind of handy. Why? Like you can see, I put a few things around this. There are many variations you can do, but it's a way to get some essential tools that you probably need if you lose your bug out bag or something you need to run away, and it is some sort of a last ditch survival tool that you keep on your body. One of the most important, because a knife is one of the most important tools you can get into a survival situation. I would advise to get some tools to the situation. So if you go into the woods for a long time, you're perhaps going to need, like this, um, a whetstone. So I put a whetstone that is small enough to fit along the side of this, and I always, whenever I need it, can take my knife out and I can start to try to sharpen the edge of the knife. So that's always possible. Yet again, the way I put it in is, if you perhaps can see, there are many layers of water resistant tape, isolation tape around it. So I have, like, how much meter did I put in? I have 4 meters of duct tape around this knife that I can use at any time because it's water resistant. So yeah, if I'm carefully, I can peel it off and use it for something else. But to be honest, if you're going to use this knife as much as you think, that will probably get a lot of tearing along the sides. But that's why I put a lot of layers on it, because the outer layers will get damaged, but you peel those off and you get to the better layers, and you still have a few meters of duct tape ready and available. If you perhaps can see, there are also between those some needles, and you will understand why, because those needles you can use to repair clothing, but what will you repair it? With some pieces of nylon thread. Some people prefer to put paracord around the scabbard of the knife, but yeah, I prefer this. I prefer nylon wire. Why? Because you have a lot more of it, and it makes the knife slimmer. So yeah, I found that more advantage than having some paracord. So yeah, with this, you can not only make some makeshift shelter, but you can also use it to sew some teared clothing. You can use it for fishing. So that's the reason why I prefer to put. And yet again, you can put a lot of nylon wire on it, and it's also stronger than regular rope if you use it a lot in wet areas, like a forest where there's a lot of dew or moist, and rope can easily get moisturized and start to rot and such. Nylon wire is usually not that sensitive for moist, so I prefer it to put it like that. Another advantage of the Glock knife is you have this piece of, if you can see, a hole in it where you can bind a wire on it, put it around, and then I put the end beneath the duct tape. So every time I need wire, I can open the duct tape a little bit, get it out, get certain wire, cut it with a knife, and that way I can measure the amount of nylon wire I will have to use. So another advantage for the Glock knife. Yeah. Another thing is this is where you held it, when you keep it on your belt. You can put it almost on every surface. It's very wide, so even those wide military buckles, you can hang it to. You can hang it to your bug-out bag. It has room enough to get around even thicker pieces of wherever you want to hang it. So that's what I also like about the Glock knife, and it's made out of a very sturdy piece of plastic. It's very hard to even cut through it, let alone it will break on its own. And even if you start to break it, it will take a lot of effort to eventually tear it off. So it's a very sturdy scabbard. So that was only the scabbard we were talking about. Now we're going to the knife. So, like you can see, it's been very much used. It's one of the. I had a lot of knives in the beginning, but since I've been using this knife for a long 6, perhaps 7 years in my times of prepping, and it still works as a mother effer. So yeah, it's a very good knife. And the rust, yeah, sometimes if I forgot to put some oil on it, so that's very important. Get some good oil, even just regular household oil. You can use it, and before you put it in your scabbard, so it will not start to rust. So that's something you need to take in account. But we will come to a countermeasurement to that in a moment. So, if you perhaps can see the Glock knife, the Glock knife is actually this was first designed as a bayonet for the Austrian army. This is a bayonet model. Usually, it doesn't have the saw teeth, but this also can be used as a bayonet. Many people would say, but if you put it on even if you put it on a rifle with saw tooth on it, and you stab a person with like a bayonet or as a spear, it would get teared in the clothing. Well, as some persons will perhaps know who had military training, like bayonet fighting, who had spear training or sword fight training, they know if you're gonna stab someone, you're not going to stab through it. So you only need a small piece in a certain area that you want to hit to cause damage and the person to incapacitate him. So yeah, because if you stab too deep, it will start to suck, and you cannot get it out anyway, even if it's without a tooth. So that's a problem. So if you're ever in a fight and you need to stab somebody with a bayonet or a spear or something, don't do it too deep, because what they usually do is when you attack, you stab and directly pull back, because perhaps he's got his buddies with him. So that's something you need to know about close combat fighting. So yeah, so to the people who doubt, there is still a lot of use for the sawtooth. We will talk about this in a moment. Why? Yeah, we'll talk about it now. Like you see, it has sawtooth on it. So if you got some branches that you cannot just cut through it, or because you do not want to dull the knife by start to hacking on it, just like that. So you start to take a lot of material from thicker pieces of branch by sawing it off. It has a double saw. It's a double toothed saw, so it goes a long time without sharpening of the saws. So I've been using this for 6-7 years old. I've used it a lot to saw, and it still works just as fine. So another thing you can use after sawing the branches is cleaving or splitting wood. You just take the knife. That's also why I like it. You see, there is here a flat surface on the top side of the knife. That's very handy, because if you put it on a piece of wood, on a piece of wood that you want to split. You put it on. You take a rock, a thick branch, or just perhaps a hammer. But I would advise some softer piece of a material so you do not damage the metal of the knife. And you start to knock on it, and that way you can split the wood on this piece of flat surface. So that's also very handy because if you can see, it's kind of in a wick shape. So that way it's better for the splitting of the wood. So that's another survival handy piece of the Glock knife. It has a point uh, alongside. It's also very handy if you want to scrape something, like if you're going to take skin the hide of a piece of game that you hunted for, and that way you can put your thumb on it and start to scrape or do other pieces of reparation where you can put pressure with your thumb without cutting it. So that's why I would advise, if you take a prepper knife, never and I would, it's your own choice, but I would never take a knife where it's a double side with a double edge. So the above side should have a piece of flat, piece of metal, so you can do the knocking and some precision cutting with or scraping with your thumb. So that's something good. Of course, the edge of the knife should always be very sharp. There are several things you can do with it. Like I said before, take a piece of whetstone onto your scabbard. Just have a regular whetstone in your bug-out bag or at home, or just something like this. This is one of those, if you see with the roll. This was from my grandfather, that you can put your knife on it, and start to sharpen it, and it still works. So yeah, yet again, old tools are going lasting for generations. All right. Yet again, like you saw, this is actually the piece that holds against the muzzle flesh. How do you say this? The piece that holds back the muzzle flesh, where it rests as a bayonet. But you can, like I showed in the beginning, also use it as a bottle opener. It's perhaps something stupid, but yeah, it's a fun fact. Let know that. Talking about facts, a subscriber of mine, I think Ronald Janssens, I think. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. I will perhaps put it in the subtitles or something. He pointed me something to I never thought about. The beneath side of the Glock knife, yeah, it has a piece of it has a hole in it. Not this hole, because this hole you use to put some cordage through it, and yeah, then you cannot lose it. But like you can see, there is a piece that I never discovered. Why? Because what you can also do is we will talk about this now. The grip is made out of a very, very sturdy plastic. It's it's a good grip that will not loosen because of the surface of the materials and lines. So I can never slip with it. It can never loose out of my hands because of the shape that is made. It's very good in the hand. So yeah, you can, if you want to if you want to knock some nails somewhere, or knock some onto some stones, or so put a tent herring on something. This is strong enough to knock on it. I will not knock too hard, because yeah, it's because that's the reason why the little lid got stuck all these years, that I never discovered it. So yeah, like you can see, this is not. It is to what in the beginning I thought it was a compartment, but it's not a compartment. This will only go this deep, and it's used to click it on the rifle as a bayonet, which the subscriber I talked about pointed me towards. So that's why I want you to put something in the reactions, so I can learn some things that I never knew. So yeah, thank you for giving me this information, Ronald. So yeah, this is like you can see, made out of metal. It's only, like I said, this deep, which is very important for the reason I will talk about in a minute. Yeah, the thing is, if you bash it with it a lot, it will get very worn out. But no fear, you can still put a lid on it, and put something very small in it. I'm talking about something real small, like a little piece of how do you say this, to make a flames, like you perhaps can see, to make a fire. So that can fit in here. You can put this on, and then you can also with this just make a fire in the wild if you lose your bag. A piece of whistle or a very tiny piece of canister with oil, so you can even in a long term situation oil it so it does not rust. So yeah. And another tip I found on the after some searching is if you lose this piece or it's total worn out by knocking on something, you can take a bolt. Yeah, this is a long bolt, too long and too small actually. But what one person did is he took the bolt. Yeah, to talking to this, he put some he drilled some thread in it, and he could put a bolt in it till it's something like this, and use it as a knocking system or to knock out windows or as a self-defense system if you do not want to deal out a lethal stab. So you can also use it as a punching device. So that's also good for self-defense. So yeah, that's very good. What I want to mention is if you're going to buy a survival knife and it has a compartment in the grip, don't. Those are not worth it, because if you have a compartment in your survival knife that will go all the way through here, that will weaken the knife and makes it dangerous for the user. Because if this is hollow, then there is just a little piece of material, sometimes even only a bolt on the inside, that will keep the knife. So if you start to cut something and this little piece of metal will break, it will start to get out, you can cut yourself, it can fly around in your face or something, and it will hurt you, and that's very bad in a survival situation. So if you buy a survival knife, buy knives that are one piece of metal. Yeah, this is still one piece of metal because the compartment for the bayonet only goes only to here. So this whole length is one piece of steel. So you can start to hack with it. You can take a lot of abuse, and it will still not break that easily. Every knife has a breaking point, but it will be less than with a knife that is only attached to this scabbard, which is also handy because if you take, I prefer a knife with, I do not know what this piece is called in English, but if you're in a self-defense situation and you want to catch the blade or a stick or whatever from another person, it can protect your fingers if it starts to glide of the person, and it will start to hook with it. That way you have a more chance to block it and counter attack. So yeah, that's something good for also some good from this. Yeah, so I think we've gone through to almost all the important things. Durability, yeah, I'm thinking we're all around. So yeah, in my opinion, the Glock knife is one of the best survival knives. It's have served me well. It's your own choice, but yeah, I prefer it. And yet again, don't forget, buy knives in one piece of steel, and not the cheap fancy ninja tactical commando knives that you see around. Oh, another thing that I forgot to mention is many people will. It's for not many people it will be important, but it can be in a survival situation. The knife. This one is blackened, but you can also have a shiny chrome knife. Why would that be important? Well, if you want to be stealthy and you do not want, if you use your knife will reflect in the sun and will perhaps alert some aggressors or potential hostile persons in the area, that could be dangerous. And then you want it to be black, especially at night when there are some flashlights going around or lights, and it will start to reflect even in the dark. You don't want that if you want to be stealthy. Yet again, sometimes you want to be found. So if you're in a survival situation and you have a chrome knife that is shiny, and you can use it as a sort of, like you perhaps can see, a reflection to send an SOS signal, or to draw attention from rescue crews like helicopter or from far away. That way. So how would you want to deal with that? Well, to be honest, I would always prefer a blackened knife for the stealth. And if you want to, yeah, be found, I would advise to tape perhaps a piece of mirror on this, or you can put some color on it. You can make a you can spray or tape it in a colorful way your scabbard. So that way, yeah, you can perhaps draw attention by waving at it. Another important thing is camouflage. Yeah, it perhaps sounds stupid, but a knife that is a khaki color. So if I drop this knife in a forest, if I lose it perhaps 10 meters away, and I think, oh shit, I forgot my knife, I lost my knife, I look back, and yeah, it's somewhere between the other green and the forest and the plants, so it's very hard to find. So I would advise, if you have a camouflage knife, put some color tape around it. That way you perhaps also have some extra tape, but that way it's colored. So if you drop your knife in the snow, in mud, in forest, in green, between bushes, between leaves, if it's in a like an orange color taped, you will always find your knife. And if there is a situation ask for more discretion or stealth, you can just take the tape off and put it back on later on when you're safe again or want to be found. So yeah, that's another thing, to not lose your knife, because yeah, if you lose your knife, you could lose it where you stand, or you could have lost it perhaps a kilometer back. And yeah, perhaps you really need that knife for survival, and you have to travel a kilometer back and look around and try to find it. So when it's camouflaged, that will be very difficult. So that's a very good tip. uh yeah, I think around another thing, last thing perhaps, is learn try to learn with try to get it's like a car. Most people are best suited with the car that they are used to. So if you have a knife that you always worked with, instead of chasing between 10 knives for every situation, take one knife that is universal for all the tests that you have. Try to work with it every time you have to do something, and yeah, it will be better in a survival situation because you're accustomed to it. You know what it can do. You know the limits. You know how to do certain things. So yeah, that's perhaps the last tip. All right. This was the Glock knife, which is, in my personal opinion, the one of the best survival knives. Yeah. So yeah, subscribe. I would really appreciate it. If you got some other tips that I've forgotten, like perhaps some people will perhaps say that you can take a pouch with a whetstone and other multi tools and tape this to your scabbard. But yeah, such things are a little bit too thick to my taste. But yeah, you can also do that. If you got other ideas, let me know it. I would really like to broaden the ideas. If you know something else about the Glock knife that I did not know yet, please let me know. I would really appreciate it. Yeah, like, subscribe, and those good stuff. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Cheers.